So
Mine wants to be on the show.
there's two of them that came up, Isaac. Is it the one that says upcoming or the one that says 3 seconds?
I don't know, we're live now. So.
Okay. So the one that
The 3
says,
seconds was probably the 3-second one.
no, it's the one that says upcoming.
Oh. Brick's in. Hi, Brick.
Go.
No, I can't do it this way because I am gonna break it.
Oh,
okay. Use two hands.
We're live. Good to see you guys.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it kind of froze a bit. Oh, there.
No, not the stream. I'm talking about the mic. Dad over here messing with buttons.
Can you guys hear us? Can you hear
They
okay?
can hear you. Yours is on, so it's just this one.
You done with this? You still need this?
No, you. There we go. Shaloha. Noise canceling.
Can I? What do I do with the studio? Can I close it or just?
No, yeah, just close it. You don't need to do anything with it now. That's me trying to change the settings on that setup account, but that's why it's tough when you guys asked me to set up a thumbnail, but I have to program it to a specific software. So.
Hey guys.
And then just hit YouTube. It's so bouncy.
We're on. All right.
Yes.
Do you want a piece of cardboard or something to put in there?
It would have to be really tiny cardboard. So.
All right. Or paper.
Turn this off. It's gonna echo.
Yeah. No, I gotta put the.
Just mute it at least.
Ah, Nancy Snowden. Hey, Nancy. Welcome. She's new to our channel and been watching for 2 weeks.
Wait, I don't want this. Where's my? I don't need too much.
What are you doing? Just close it. Close it and reopen. Yeah, there you go. And then file. You're already in Safari, so hit file, and then new window. There you go.
And now what?
I don't know. Just go search whatever you're gonna search.
Oh no, I'm not searching it. I'm ready to do the show.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're on. Okay. Shall we open up in prayer?
Sure.
Okay.
Now worry out the kinks.
All right, guys. Welcome again to our slightly delayed show. It's again, we get the technical difficulties taken care of by our technician Isaac. We will again now start our, what is this? Our third show.
Yeah.
Our third show in the House of David. So why don't we open up in prayer?
Okay.
All right. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, Abba, for allowing us to come together with friends and family to, again, discuss, Lord, stories about you, stories that you've, Lord, left for our benefit. And the story of House of David is one of those that we're going to watch, critique, and consider. There are a lot of things that were beyond the Bible that we want to talk about and discuss, and so that we can make sure that what's being presented is actually from you and as accurate as possible. We thank you again for all of this and for all of people that are joining us. Again, blessings upon all. We pray this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So now you would have to turn there after we start the show, right? Or do you want to go? Can go like this? Can you see mom and dad at the same time?
Can't zoom in, but
Oh, okay. Well, maybe better just hit that then.
well,
So,
I can see you both at the same time, but it's just a little tiny. That's all.
uh,
We got some old people.
It looks like this, honey.
oh, that's really small.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably
turn
better
around,
to go there.
Okay, we're gonna change the screen. Isaac's gonna orient it to our large screen TV, so we can see. Oh, you guys can see better. And again, we're talking about the House of David, and this is again. We've watched what 3 episodes already. Surprisingly, they put 3 episodes up for viewing, and that was a good surprise. I hope all of you saw all 3 episodes. If not, you can watch it afterwards. But we're going to discuss, as much as we can about these episodes and what was actually intriguing and something that you're not accustomed to. For those of you that have read the Bible, read First Samuel, then you know what the biblical account is. But as you probably witnessed, that there are some things that in this show that are beyond the Bible, things that we never knew about. So,
yeah, exactly. Isaac, you want to put this in there to make it more stable?
So here we go. Season 1, Episode 1. Remember, the opening scene asks a question. Can one stone change the course of history?
Not that one.
And my thinking. Well, what are your thoughts on that? Would that be the best possible opening line? Can one stone change the course of history? I guess they're pointing out to the one object that would change the course of history. But was it just that stone? Was it just the account of David meeting Goliath? It was an entrance for him to get into the kingdom of Shaul. But was it necessary, or was that the sole reason? I think it goes beyond that. Before the battle, in the valley of Elah with Goliath, God set everything up. God had commissioned King Shaul, or Shaul, to be king, the first king of Israel, and yet that was a poor choice for the people, because they wanted a human king. They didn't want a divine king. And so we're going to come back to this topic, this question: can one stone change the course of history? Let's move on to the actual show. So when the show was going on, and again, we can't play it for you because that would be copyright violation and infringement, and they would shut our channel down. So here are little pictures of the show, and we can talk about this. Here, David, as a young man, is laying down on the field because he's a shepherd. It's interesting. He's the only shepherd out of a family of 5 boys, right?
6.
6 boys.
And he's
Oh,
the
he's the
seventh.
sixth. Oh, he's the
He's
seventh.
the seventh, yeah.
6 boys. He's the seventh. And out of all of them, he's the only designated shepherd.
Yeah.
So he said he's looking up into heaven, and relating to God, talking to God. And here's the question that comes to play. Show me your purpose, oh God. Show me your will for me. Show me who I am, please. And here you see again David being very, very intimate in his questions to God, and asking politely, to show him what he's to be, what his main purpose in life is to be. You do remember that being a shepherd was the lowest class of citizens in the nation of Israel.
It's like slave work.
Yeah, well, it was even worse than slave work, because even the basic townspeople would look down upon the shepherds. First of all, What preceded the shepherds was their odor, their smell, because they smelled like animals, and everything that dealt with the field. And so you might be thinking, oh, isn't the field a nice spring smell? Yes, it is. Then you throw the animals in there and their poop and urine, and it's not so clean and spring like anymore. But the shepherd, the role of a shepherd was one of the most looked down upon and frowned upon occupations at that time. The scene moves on now to David and his mother, Nitzevet Bat Adael. Now the question is, wait, did the Bible talk about David's mother? You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
not really, not at all, actually.
not no. The Bible does not. You can look in First Samuel. You can look at all the other 65 books. You will not find the name of David's mother. Okay, and yet we know that David was a child from the line of um, Boaz and Obed, right?
Right,
And
and
then
Ruth, you gotta
and Ruth,
remember.
yeah, because of Ruth, and then Jesse. Okay. So um, when we start talking about David's mother, I put down the site that you can look and research for yourself, kabod.org and thejewishwoman.org. And again, this comes from how can I say this? The oral tradition. Again, this is a midrash that is a commentary, a Hebrew commentary on David and especially his mother. Comes in the form of Yalkut, Hamachiri, and Sefer HaToda'ah. Uh, you'll find that in the Sivan and Shavuot sections of the midrash. But I just wanted you to know that as you watch this show and you see all these scenes about David's mother, and the background of what's happening, this is actually pretty interesting to know because there is an account of her mentioned, and although again it's coming from the Jewish back backstory,
Yeah, like Jewish legend, you could say.
Jewish legend, there may be it may merit truth, it may fringe on hyper legend, hard to say, but there are written accounts of this. So obviously, the producers of the House of David took these accounts into their uh, program,
To their narrative, yeah.
into their narrative, and so we just wanted to share with you where they got their sources from, so that again, it's not something that's conjured up out of air, but it's actually from actual literary sources that you can actually look for yourself.
Isaac,
Okay.
can you make the camera go down just a little bit? We can't read the top line in the thing.
You know.
Also, did you want me to read comments people are making about what you're saying
Sure.
too?
Oh yeah. This is the interactive Bible study.
Yeah, I
So,
was just waiting for a break so I could
Okay.
read these. So let's see. Patrick said he doesn't watch TV, so he's just going to go along with our study here. And I told him it's okay because you took screenshots of the movie and
Yeah.
or of the series, so you could kind of see what's going on.
Yep.
Also, he said until they signed and had to buy an atonement sacrifice from a shepherd. I guess when you were talking about the shepherd was like the lowest on the
totem
the
pole
employment
of
rung.
occupations. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Tammy noted that David's not treated well so far at all in the episodes.
Yes, he's not. And the
Yeah.
question is why? Why is David not treated well? And so
Yeah.
we actually do have an account from these kabad.org and the jewishwoman.org. And here's a saying a little bit on David's birth. Did you want to read this?
Sure.
Okay. I'll have my beautiful wife read it because Kaylee's eating and she can't talk right now.
Okay. So this is
Eating for two?
This is from Chabad.org, thejewishwoman.org, and this is a midrash, which is like a
Jewish commentary.
Jewish legend, kind of like a commentary that to give some more information. So says, why was the young David so reviled by his brothers and people? To understand the hatred directed toward David, we need to investigate the inner workings behind the events, the secret episodes that aren't recorded in the prophetic books, but are alluded to in Midrashim. David's father, Yeshai, that's the Hebrew name for Jesse, was the grandson of Boaz and Ruth. After several years of marriage to his wife, Nitzevet, and after having raised several virtuous children, Yeshai began to entertain personal doubts about his ancestry. True, he was the leading Torah authority of his day, but his grandmother Ruth was a convert from the nation of Moab, as related in the book of Ruth. During Ruth's lifetime, many individuals were doubtful about the legitimacy of her marriage to Boaz. The Torah specifically forbids an Israelite to marry a Moabite convert, since this is the nation that cruelly refused the Jewish people, or the Hebrews basically, passage through their land or food and drink to purchase when they wandered in the desert after being freed from Egypt. Boaz and the sages understood this law as per the classic interpretation transmitted in the oral Torah as forbidding intermarriage with converted male Moabites, who were the ones responsible for the cruel conduct, while exempting female Moabite converts. With his marriage to Ruth, Boaz hoped to clarify and publicize this Torah law, which was still unknown to the masses. Boaz died the night after his marriage with Ruth. That's something we don't get in the Bible.
Interesting. Yeah, never heard of that before.
Ruth had conceived and subsequently gave birth to their son Obed, the father of Yeshai, which is Jesse. Some rabble-rousers at the time claimed that Boaz's death verified that his marriage to Ruth the Moabite had indeed been forbidden. Time would prove differently. Once Obed, and that his name is so called because he was a true Obed, a servant of God. Obed means servant. And later Yeshai and his offspring were born. Their righteous conduct and prestigious positions proved the legitimacy of their ancestry. It was impossible that men of such caliber could have descended from a forbidden union. However, later in his life, doubt gripped at Yeshai's heart, gnawing away at the very foundation of his existence. Being the sincere individual that he was, his integrity compelled him to action. If Yeshai's status was questionable, he was not permitted to remain married to his wife, a veritable Israelite. So in other words, Jesse's wife was legit. He was part Moabite, so everybody was just like all up in arms about that.
And that's David's mom, right?
Yes. Being the sincere individual he was, his integrity compelled him to action. If Yeshai's status was questionable, he was not permitted to remain married to his wife, a veritable Israelite. Disregarding the personal sacrifice, Yeshai decided the only solution would be to separate from her, no longer engaging in marital relations. Yeshai's children were aware of this separation. After a number of years had passed, Yeshai longed for a child whose ancestry would be unquestionable. His plan was to engage in relations with his Canaanite maidservant. That doesn't make sense to me. That's going to be more questionable. Okay, he said to her, I will be freeing you conditionally. If my status as a Jew is legitimate, then you are freed as a proper Jewish convert to marry me. If, however, my status is blemished and I have the legal status of a Moabite convert forbidden to marry an Israelite, I am not giving you your freedom, but as a Canaanite maidservant, you may marry a Moabite convert. Does that all make sense, guys? In other words, it's
Yeah.
Jesse's status that's questionable, not his wife's.
Yep.
But instead, he puts his wife away, and in these, like, talking to this Canaanite servant, saying, you know, we could have this as a legit relationship because you're a convert, and it's permitted for a part Moabite person to marry a convert, and everything's good before God. But he's not aware of that other law because he's been brought up like with that stigma against him and his dad
Yes.
and his grandpa, and just anyway. The maidservant was aware of the anguish of her mistress, Nitzevet, and that's David's mother. She understood her pain in being separated from her husband for so many years. She knew as well of Nitzevet's longing for more children. So in other words, you saw that, you know, the scene that has all the sons in there, and well, actually, no, it's just David and Eliab walking to that city,
Yes.
and David's asking about what he remembers about the mom, because they have the same mom,
They're the same mom, yeah.
But then because of Jesse's actions, it caused all his sons, who were probably teenagers and early 20s by that time, to
hate
treat the mom really
hate
bad.
the mom, yeah.
And so that's why he's like, I regret, treating her.
Treating my mom that way.
Yeah. So the maidservant was aware of the anguish of her mistress Nitzevet. She understood her pain in being separated from her husband for so many years. She knew as well of Nitzevet's longing for more children. And the empathetic maidservant secretly approached Nitzevet and informed her of Yeshai's plan, suggesting a bold counterplan. Let us learn from your ancestresses and replicate their actions. Switch places with me tonight, just as, who else switched places, Isaac?
Leah and
Just
Rachel.
as Leah did with
Yeah.
Rachel, she advised. With a prayer on her lips that her plan succeeded, Nitzevet took the place of her maidservant. That night, Nitzevet conceived. Yeshai remained unaware of the switch, so he didn't even know that happened. After 3 months, Nitzevet's pregnancy became obvious. Incensed, her sons wished to kill their apparently adulterous mother, because they don't even know, and the illegitimate fetus she carried. Nitzevet, for her part, would not embarrass her husband by revealing the truth of what had occurred. Like her ancestress Tamar, who was prepared to be burned alive rather than embarrass Judah, Nitzevet chose a vow of silence. And like Tamar, Nitzevet would be rewarded for her silence with a child of greatness who would be the forebearer of Moshiach. Unaware of the truth behind his wife's pregnancy, but having compassion on her, Yeshai ordered his sons not to touch her. Do not kill her. Instead, let the child that will be born be treated as a lowly and despised servant. In this way, everyone will realize his status is questionable, and as an illegitimate child, he will not marry an Israelite. From the time of his birth onwards, then, Nitzevet's son, this is David, was treated by his brothers as an abominable outcast. Noting the conduct of his brothers, the rest of the community assumed this youth was a treacherous sinner full of unspeakable guilt.
Whoa.
On the infrequent occasions that Nitzevet's son would return from the pastures to his home in Bethlehem, he was shunned by the townspeople. If something was lost or stolen, he was accused as the natural culprit and ordered, in the words of the psalm, to repay what I have not stolen. Eventually, the entire lineage of Yeshai was questioned, as well as the basis of the original law of the Moabite convert. People claimed that all the positive qualities of Boaz became manifest in Yeshai and his illustrious 7 sons. Okay, so he had 7, and then David. While all the negative character traits from Ruth the Moabite clung to the despicable youngest son.
Thank you, dear.
So there's
Well,
a little background.
There's the
That kind
background.
of helps explain
when
why
now-
they treated him so bad.
Yes. So now that when you watch the program, you'll understand why he had the terrible treatment from his brothers, from the townspeople, why his mother was also treated in like fashion, and yet it was none of their fault. It all belonged to Yeshai or Jesse, you know,
Yeah,
He-
and because of his heritage.
because of his heritage.
Right. And then Tammy made a comment earlier. She said she really liked the scene where the soldiers went to and the king went to go see Orpah in the cave, and she was called Mother
Wait.
of Giants. But we're gonna get there.
Why are you going
We're
there? We're
go-
not there
no,
yet.
I'm just reading what she said. So we're gonna get there eventually, Tammy. Don't worry.
Now, do we need to go cover everything? Okay.
Tammy, wait.
All right. Any other questions or comments? You see?
Kaylee, you see anything in there? I was reading.
Okay. All right. Moving on then. The show now moves on to the next scene where a city. Well, during the battle with the Amalekites and the defeated Amalekites, Jonathan was told that a border town was utterly destroyed, attacked and destroyed, and he had concern for this border city because again it's part of his kingdom, and he wanted to investigate what happened, who attacked them, who killed all the inhabitants, and as they were in the town looking around, they noticed that it was some very, how can I say this, heinous acts of violence, and nobody survived. People were torn apart, and as Eliab, David's older brother, said, they weren't given the luxury of having a knife tear them apart. They were torn apart by sheer strength or pulled apart. And so here, Jonathan's discovery leads to, and here
Ano ba?
here in Tagalog, it's called, the phrase is ano ba, and you see the WTF there. That's not really the translation for Tagalog to English, but for English people to say, what the fire truck? You know what I mean? That's what Jonathan's saying. What the heck is going on here? You know what? He had to climb a ladder to put his hand next to this handprint, and here you go, seeing this, and he's saying, no way, had to be steroids. Yeah, they probably had steroids back then. But what's interesting is that he said that this palm print or handprint was a size larger than a weaver's basket. And if anybody knows anything about weavers, they had pretty large baskets. So there you go. That's this is the scene where, again, the giants were shown to make an impression. After that battle, King Saul again wants to celebrate because it was a victory for his army. Although they lost 5,000 men, he had a stele created. A stele is a monument made out of stone, and there's writing on there. Notice the writing is in Paleo Hebrew to show its genuine authenticity of oldness or ancientness. That's funny.
It's just a flex to show them, hey, we did our homework.
Yeah. And if you watch the show, again, I can't repeat everything in the show, but it pretty much talks about the house of Shaul, and how great they are and how they're to be glorified because of this battle. They're taking out the Amalekites. And again, this is all based upon the instructions that came from God to Samuel or Shemuel, and from Samuel to King Saul, King Shaul. King
There's
Shaul does not give God any glory or recognition. It's all about him, and his family. And that is not good because why? The command from God was to kill all the Amalekites, to burn, kill their herds, their flocks, to burn all their belongings. Nothing was to be saved. Everything was deemed kerem, which means committed to destroyed to the Lord.
and
Everything had to be destroyed to the Lord.
and especially kill the king,
Oh
which
yeah,
he
and
did not.
especially the king. So now we go to the next scene, and here in their victory tents, they're celebrating, drinking wine, and just having a great old time. And then King Saul stops to look at the entrance of the tent, and there at the entrance is Samuel.
Hmm.
Samuel with his his sidekick. Now I put down the Jaws intro soundbite. But wait. As Samuel is walking into the tent, Saul is experiencing some anxiety because Samuel is not smiling. Okay, thank you, son. We're giving you some 3D effects here. Okay, hope you like that. Appreciate that Jaw soundbite. The prophet Samuel, the prophet of Yod He Vav He, again is now coming into the tent, and he is making a beeline to King Shaul. And what does King Shaul do? He boasts about his defeating the Amalekites. Defeating the Amalekites. Of course, Samuel knows better. Samuel knows that God says no. And again, instead of being embarrassed in front of all the people, King Saul asks Samuel to come with him into another tent and to speak to him privately. And it was during this course, this private conversation, that the beginning of the end comes into play. God, this is again coming from Samuel, rejects Saul. Okay, he rejects him because Saul has been disobedient this whole time in his kingship. He's been king for over 20 years, and he's been very disobedient. What's very interesting is if you read any accounts of King Shaul uh, speaking about God, he never calls God his own. He doesn't say my God or our God, first person singular or plural, but he also actually uses the third person, singular or plural. Your God or their God. They're talking about the one true God. The same God that commanded Samuel to anoint Shaul. So again, from the very beginning, from the very onset, it didn't seem like Saul was a true believer, and his kingship displays that. As Samuel is about to leave, King Shaul grasps the hem of his cloak and says, "No, wait, bless me. Don't leave. I will make amends." It's funny how people always want to make amends after they've committed the crime. But God is not one to say, "No, well, I'll give you a second chance." He actually does. He gave King Saul many chances, but this was the final disobedience to be examined. And so Instead of Samuel saying, "Okay, I'll bless you and I'll give you another. God will give you another," Samuel walks away, and King Shaul's grip on Samuel's cloak is steadfast, and it rips. And so, because of the torn cloak, Samuel turns around and says, "You need to buy me a new one." No, that's not true. He says, "The kingdom is also ripped from your very hands,"
Hmm.
just like his cloak was. So, uh, with that, the presence, the anointing of God, the presence of God is taken away. Okay, now that can happen. It can be taken away from a person, especially in the Old Testament. And now King Shaul is in the dark side, the demonic realm. He realizes, and you know what I like about the cinematography of the show is that, let me go back again. Prior to that, it's full color, clear. This is not the spiritual realm. This is the earthly realm. But as soon as Samuel leaves with God's blessing, and God has left left Shaul, this is what happens. He's in this darkened blue spiritual realm, which is actually quite frightening, if you ask me. The scene turns back to, again, Samuel walking into the main tent where everybody was at. And here he sees the king of the Amalekites, who was chained up at the foot of King Saul's throne. And this is the Amalekite king, the witch king named Agag. Okay, Agag.
So do we want to interject things that we were taking notes on that
Sure.
were like discrepancies and things here? Because
Yeah.
I think Kaylee, you have a list too, right, sweetie? You're making a list of all the things that to talk about here. Because I was going to just mention the thing about Agog. Agog was actually supposed to be a giant. They didn't depict him very well in this. I mean, he maybe have looked something like that. Of course, demonically possessed, because we know the giants are the offspring of the fallen angels, right? And he had a really high level of Canaanite blood. So, but he would have been quite a bit bigger than they showed him in the series. And let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, I don't think we've gone over anything else here. But yeah, that's just one of the things I noted. Although they did mention in the Bible that he was chained up beneath the throne,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that
he was a
that was
prisoner. I
correct.
mean, again, the victor, is always higher than the vanquished kings. So, and it was a custom to keep the kings alive, but Samuel made it clear, again, from God. God made it clear, kill them all. And if you think about it, because of the fact that he was considered a witch king, there was cursing and other spiritual sources involved here. And I think that's why God wanted them to be everything to be annihilated, everything to be destroyed and devoted to him. Because God will not stand with another so-called God entity, even though we know it's not a God, it's a fallen angel. But anything to do with that, and all the followers of this so-called pseudo God, uh, would have to be destroyed. No ifs, ands, or buts.
There's a bunch of funny comments. Brick goes, "That's my cousin Billy," and Patrick said, "He looks like me, Tammy, except I don't wear contacts." And also Isaac and Kaylee, I will get up and pass you a mic because we want you guys to interject things here too. If you have anything you want to
Sure.
say about
I
any
don't
of
have
these
anything.
scenes,
Kaylee?
because
I've not taken notes or anything because I was just like,
Look at the
well,
roots,
I
look at
don't
the hair.
even know the part of the Bible yet.
yeah,
Yeah, but that's why we're doing this.
yeah,
As a family and a external family.
or else
They
things
just
that
won't let her take a nap, so they're asking her a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
or things that stood out to you, like anything that stood out, or things you had questions you want to discuss while we're going through it, just because we all watched this together like a family. It was really cool. And I see a lot of people in the chat have already seen it. Some people have not, but that's okay, because that's why we're just reviewing it to show, what they showed in the series, and what matched the Bible, what didn't, what matched the midrash that I just read, and what didn't. So any
I mean,
comments are great.
Rick says they're going to get a makeover since they look like Agag.
Oh, gosh.
So,
I guess for me, it's not really like, I guess like the cinematography of it, from an outside perspective.
I kind of didn't want to listen to all the chanting too. If I'm being honest, like that kind of scares me right now.
What is it? The chanting?
Yeah, like all the chanting, like all
Yeah.
them speaking in tongues, like especially during pregnancy, I'm just like, I don't want to hear that, and I don't want baby to hear that, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, I was trying to close my ears during the while watching the show.
No, that was smart. Even like I
Yeah,
told you, my friend in California, when she watched it, when they started doing that, she just muted it. She's like, I don't want that in my
yeah,
house.
I
You know,
was
she's
kind
I
of
rebuke that.
even when I watch certain movies with Isaac too at home, I'm just like, oh, I'm like, I tell him out loud, I'm like, oh, I'm scared, or like, I don't want to listen to this.
No, and that's good because
Yeah,
you're shielding your child also,
yeah.
and I'm sure after baby's born, you guys will be really mindful of what you're watching, so that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't go in baby's ears, right? Not
Yeah.
affect baby's spirit that way.
Because also on the flip side too, I'm the kind of person that's like, oh, what are they saying? Like, I wanna go look it up what they're saying online and Google search it, but also that's scary in itself too. Like, I want to know, but I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So.
then also too, I wanted to note the language that you heard him speaking.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't understand what it was, but there was a little note at the bottom that said he's speaking Ugaritic, and
Ooh.
Ugaritic is the Canaanite language. And because it's called Ugaritic, it could actually be Agaritic because King Og was the one that actually made that language up.
Oh.
Kind of like the royals made up the language of English for us all
Yeah.
to speak, so we can be cursing each other all the time.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, Ugaritic is the Canaanite language. There's quite a bit of extra biblical
Mm.
material that was written in Ugaritic, and so it's kind of interesting there. And then also, like what Noble was noting from the scene with Saul standing by that pillar,
Yeah.
that was written in Paleo Hebrew, and
Yeah.
that was kind of something interesting to note as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad they're doing the research, but also, um, like from a viewer's perspective, how far can you look into it? Because I know some, it's what is it called? Mm, I've seen online that some shows actually do have witches on set,
Yeah.
Oh
and
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's standard.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Hollywood
So.
is known to just always, and Brick even said they always try to sneak in the demonic chanting in there. They do that
Yeah.
in a lot of movies. I mean, even, of course, like Disney movies, you see even just like their cartoons, they always have like a witch or some kind of evil
Mm-hmm.
character in there that's doing something, some kind of strange chanting, or, it's just, like I was just thinking of Lion King. They have like the
Yeah.
monkey who is the witch doctor doing all kinds of strange chanting even in that movie. So it's
Mm.
just it's really it's rampant in Hollywood. There's always going to be
Hey, Harry
something.
Potter series. I mean,
Oh,
come on, it's all over the
True.
place.
I refuse to watch that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, on that note, I think it would be a good idea that people could maybe pray before and maybe after watching the show too, just so they're not led,
Affected in
That's
any
a good
yeah,
idea.
adverse ways.
yeah,
Yeah.
or deceived in any way.
Well, that's a lot of speculation. Granted, you guys don't even know what they're saying. So
Yeah.
he could just be like, I'm an idiot and I don't know why I did this in history, but hey, whatever. You know, like
Oh, yeah.
But this is Hollywood.
No, but he
You
could
know already they're
he
gonna
could also
try to
he could
curse
also be
people
saying
who are watching it.
he could also be saying, I invite all of you to join me in the worship of,
Yeah,
Baal,
whatever.
Baal, or um, Molech. Yeah, we don't know what they're saying. It's an old language.
so
Oh,
if that's the case, then why are we watching it?
well, that was included in the film, in the show, and that was very short lived. It was a short to emphasize that this guy was a witch king and had again demonic
Well, we're gonna get
um,
Goliath and all the right. What are they called?
Well,
the
anything that
All
comes
giants.
out
those
of Hollywood
people.
is gonna have this stuff. So we should, if we're not gonna watch this, we should cut off everything.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, we watch this so
That's what
we
I
can
mean.
talk about it, and we can talk about it because people that are watching this that don't know better will understand. Hey, beware. And when you watch this, just remember, do not do the chants that they're doing. Do not fall into the belief of their fallen gods, because there's only one true God, and simple as that. We're critiquing it just to make sure that anybody else that watches it, even children, will know better, will hear this, and or their parents will hear it and share it with their children. Oh yeah, that this is witchcraft at its worst, and you don't want to be like that. You don't want to be a Harry Potter wannabe, because there's no good end. There's no safe end when you follow a false god.
So my
You know.
point is to just trust the Most High, and He will protect you from all curses.
Yeah, and you can also mute it. You could, I mean, it's easy to
Even if you hear it, like Abba's gonna protect you regardless. You
Well,
know.
Yeah,
if
but some people don't know.
no, but if you hear it, doesn't
Well,
mean that
just
you.
because they don't know it doesn't mean Abba's not gonna do it.
No, just because you hear it doesn't mean you're agreeing with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're hearing
Exactly.
it, you're recognizing, oh, this is not good, and so this way, the person watching will make the judgment for themselves.
Because
Yes,
my concept here is like, the whole thing about David not being afraid, right? Even if you hear it, I don't think that's a reason to like be like suspicious or anything. Like you should just recognize that Abba's gonna protect you.
right, right.
So
But Sherry says again, like you said, what you said, Isaac, pray as not to open yourself up for those influences.
I gotta take this.
Okay, it's work.
Yep.
I even do that with listening to videos and also reading. So Sherry's got the right attitude. She's praying over everything, before she watches and reads anything, and that's true because you have to protect yourself. Again, what is it? Put on the full armor of God. Correct. Yeah.
That was good. I'm glad we at least mentioned that too.
Okay. The next slide we move on to is where Samuel says, "Bring here to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites." And Agag came to him cheerfully. And Agag said, "Surely the bitterness of death has passed." This is found in 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 32. This is again a line that was actually in the show, and it comes from scripture itself. And what is the response? Samuel says, "As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women." And Samuel took the sword that came from Agag and hacked him to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. So again, this is the next verse after, show that Scripture is actually being deployed in this film, and in fact, the screenwriters put the lines in there verbatim, and so rest assured, this is a biblical story, and it does have biblical counts in here. And as Samuel is done hacking and whacking, he walks away in the presence of everybody in the tent. What does he say? And this is my favorite line. God is not mocked. God is not mocked.
And in what way was he being mocked? Can you describe that? Some people might not understand.
Okay, well,
Maybe you should. I
King-
think maybe, but you share it. Go
King,
ahead.
Sure.
King Shaul, right? What did King Shaul do in his kingdom, in his kingship?
Well,
He did not obey God.
Yeah, he did not obey God. And so what in what form was he mocking Abba? He had that man alive in the presence of all his people.
Yeah, where where holiness reigns, he brought file and deceit and
Not just the fact that the
uncleanliness.
man existed, but it's the disobedience of the fact that he's alive.
Yeah.
Why is he even alive? Why is he there to even witness any of this? He should have already been in jail. So
Yeah, and it's interesting that the kingship of Saul again was to point out to the people that wanted him to be their king, you will suffer much. And King Shaul did that. He took their children, he took their land, he took their taxes, the taxes from the people. He made the life of the people miserable, where God would have never done that. King Shaul did. And so the people were under a heavy burden and they were not happy. And if you watch the show, you will even notice that Jesse says, "I do not support that king," or something like, "I do not want you to work for this king."
Right.
But your other brothers do, David said. Yes, because he took them. He took them. And so even Jesse said, "I want nothing to do with that king." And that's the attitude.
No, I'm just ready to say something whenever you're done.
I'm just gonna hold it.
Okay, so I'm just going to read a couple things in the chat. Sherry said, God may be mocked, but rather God will not stand to be mocked, which is a good point. Thank you, Sherry. And then Tammy said, Saul really freaks and his wife isn't any good. Yeah, we're going to see that coming up, Tammy. Good point. And Patrick, he said, like the Pentecostals handling rattlesnakes in their occult meetings there. That's true, because they take that verse out of context. Have you heard of those churches that they say that they can protected from handling poisonous snakes? So they bring a whole cage of poisonous snakes into the church And people pick them up and pass them around and say, no, our protection is from God. We're not going to get bit. Or if they do get bit, they're not going to die or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Shay said 2 Corinthians 6, verse 17, therefore come out from among them and be separate. That's good. Thank you guys all for sharing.
Okay. Moving.
So that begs the question: are we the guys with the snakes now by watching this, or are
No,
we?
no, no, no.
See what I mean? Something to think about, guys.
All right. Well, when Samuel says God is not mocked, that was the end of episode 1. So now we move to episode 2. And there's not much in episode 2, but we're going to do the best we can. Here we have, again, the early morning. It starts off where Nitzevet is taking her son Daniel to watch the sunrise. And David's complaining it's so early. Of course, young children will complain it's too early. And then we move to this scene where it says, "What is the Birkat Hakama?" And to me, it's like, yeah, what is that? Because she's telling David, "Do you remember the Birkat Hakama?" And he says, "Yes." Then he says, "No, not really. I don't." Well, the Birkat Hakama is a Jewish blessing that thanks God for creating the sun. It is recited every 28 years when the sun turns to the same position it was in at the beginning of creation. So ever since the beginning of creation, the Jews will again have this Birkat Hakama recited every 28 years. Now, I've never heard of this. You probably have never heard of this too. This is definitely a Jewish thing, probably coming, who knows, from the Mishnah or ultimately from the Talmud. But again, this is a Jewish celebration, and yet the show does actually talk about it. So you know that their writers they have Jewish writers
Oh, definitely.
in their group.
Well, Hollywood's known for that.
Yeah. As she is leaving with her son, the disrespect continues because the man in the background says, "You and your child defile the name of Jesse." Of course, we know the story behind this now because Alisa was able to read that to us, and now there's greater understanding in seeing what's going on here. So the pain of rejection kicks in, and he also says, "You defile the name of Jesse and all of Bethlehem." So the entire town of Bethlehem is defiled because of Jesse's poor actions, and interpretation. You know, he did not know that he was knowing his wife intimately when he thought he was getting the maidservant. I guess in the dark it all feels the same, huh, Jesse? Jeez.
How could you not tell the difference?
Yeah, how can you not tell the difference? She's well, yeah. So now the scene moves on to the king who has demonic episodes. Notice again, we're back into the darkness, the blue hues. And here he's again screaming and yelling because the peace of God that was once with him was taken away. And now we have a evil replacement, a demonic replacement that's plaguing him. And again, when you mock God, be careful because when God takes away his spirit, it's going to be replaced by something that's not so godly. You know, he again is facing the horror of it all. He's being restrained by his son and his general, and then the wife, his fearful wife, Ahinom. I think that's how you spell it. Is that how? Yeah. And not much is mentioned about her, but Lisa did a little digging up and research. So Lisa, share about Ahinom.
Yeah, that name is mentioned twice in the Old Testament, and um, there's Saul's wife Ahinom, and interesting enough, David's second wife is also Ahinom, who he had a son named Ammon from. And some Jewish scholars speculate that it could have been the same woman. I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm interested to see what the series does with that. If I want to see what David's second wife is, if it's the same person, because of course, there's a lot of people who disagree with that. Like, there's no way that could be possible because David's Ahinom was fleeing with him from Saul. So I don't know. We'll just see I want to see how the series depicts it though.
Yeah, we can't jump ahead of the series. So, but again, thank you, Annie, for doing that research on Ahinom. Uh, And if you've noticed to this point of the series, the episode, she's actually kind of pretty evil. You know, she's kind of like a Jezebel. You know, so that's the end of season. I mean, season one, episode two. Again, not much really to talk about it, other than what was displayed in this show. So now we move on to episode three, and episode three kind of begins with this guy named Doeg, the Edomite. Okay, and Abner, the King Shaul's general, uh, again comes to him because of the fact that the queen Ahinoam wants Samuel to be followed. Why is that? Because Samuel told King Shaul as he was confronting him in episode one that the anointing would be given to someone else, that God has chosen someone else to be king of Israel. And, you know, when you say something like that to an existing king, you're going to get ramifications. Okay. You're going to get jealousy. You're going to get manhunts. You're going to get everything that's included with someone that is whose position is being threatened. And remember, they came up with the word treason, treason, treason. You know, anything that goes against the king is treason.
I just want to address a question in the chat. Britt is saying, so Og's not a giant, but yes, no, he was one of the two giants, Og and Sihon, that made it through the flood. Og is actually Og Jr. There was another, his father was Og before the flood, who died. And this can be found in the book of Og of Bashan, because this is the same Og, and he fathered hundreds and hundreds of giant children. Like I think that Canaan mingled with his bloodline really early on, and that's why they have all these different races of giants in Canaan.
Yeah, all different giants. Exactly. So, Doeg, the Edomite, what's up with this guy? Well, Doeg was the chief of Saul's herdsmen. You'll find this in 1 Samuel 21:7. Okay. And so, again, so if he's a herdsman, that means he's in a sense, a shepherd as well. But portrayed in this show, he seems to be more than just a herdsman. He seems to be a tinkerer, a, uh, a person who experiments with animals, and he experiments with how to kill, how to destroy, how to lame. It's interesting. Abner, here we go. Abner, the general of King Shaul, comes to Doeg. Why? Because he wants Doeg to follow Samuel, and the command was given: follow him and see who he talks to. Any person of interest, any king, any leader, anybody that reflects leadership. I want to know because this might be the person that Samuel will be anointing as the next king. The scene changes now to Samuel coming home, and he meets up with his wife. Whose name is Hela. Again, and we get that from the show. It says, Hela, I am anointing a new king in a nation that has one. Again, the Samuel's dialogue here. We did some research on trying to find out who Hela was, and she might be related to Hilo on the Big Island, or our friend's dog is named Hilo. But no, we could not find nothing on Hela. But we know that Samuel was married. We also know that Samuel had two sons that, again, took the role of priest, and they did a very lousy job of it. And the people says, look, Samuel, your boys are terrible. We want a new king, you know. And so Samuel is here blaming himself, says, did I not raise my sons good enough, or in a way that should have been more godly? Because they're the reason the people want a new king other than the one king of heaven. And so Samuel's wife comforts him and says, look, you know, that's not up to you. They are individuals. They have their own free will. They will do as they see or choose. And unfortunately, much like the priest Eli and his two sons, they both went on the rampant ways of the world, and they were corrupt in every possible way, and the people knew it. And Samuel knew it too. What does a prophet do with his corrupt sons? You know, send them to the detention home. No, the boys' home.
Beat that.
Beat the evil out of them. I don't know. So now we come to the queen again, and Abner. as they continue plotting because of the fact that King Shaul is not in his right mind and the queen is taking over. And so she's taking over and she wants to make sure that their kingship is retained and not jeopardized in any way.
Should I make a comment about Abner, the research I did on Abner now, or should we wait?
Yeah, you can.
Should we wait till we get to Endor?
That's the
Oh, we're
next
about
slide.
there.
That's the next
Okay.
one, yeah.
Okay, so from the Bible, Abner is the captain of Saul's army, and he's also Saul's first cousin. Their fathers were brothers, and so Abner means father Ner because his father was named Ner. So that's why. And also, in Midrash and like extra biblical books, Legends of the Jews says that Abner was a giant. So they didn't like Brick was saying, Og was actually a giant. They usually don't depict Og as being a giant, but Abner was also supposedly a giant. And there's a lot of information in Legends of the Jews. We'll probably get there in Digital Readers Club, and we'll be reading that part to just see how massive he was compared to David, especially. And Abner was because he was family with Saul. He was heavily invested in Saul's family keeping the throne, just because he loved all the benefits that come with that, the prestige, the wealth, everything. So that's why Abner was so heavily invested in trying to kill David later on. But we'll get there. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Abner so that you can see why. Also, too, an interesting thing that's in Legends of the Jews is the witch of Endor that eventually Saul and Abner will go to see. Not this one that's predicted that is shown in this series. Like
No,
not
they only mentioned it. They never said the witch of Endor. They said your mother
well when
from
they
Endor. Have you visited your mother from Endor? So they haven't said anything about whether she's a witch or not. So
well what I was trying to say is that in the next scene after this is when these two, Abner and the queen, go to see a witch in
Yes.
Endor. That's not his mother.
No.
So way too young and doesn't look anything like him, of
Right.
course. And
yeah,
but
I think they understood that by
was
him
somebody
not
else.
saying, "Oh, hi, mom."
Yeah, but they did recognize him, so he
Yeah,
was known in
exactly.
Endor, and I'm sure it's probably because of his mother.
Yeah.
But I mean, hopefully we'll see what the series does with that. If they do, I mean, they should have him and Saul eventually going to see his mother, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that part was actually that was a little hard to interpret because they mentioned, "Have you seen your mother?" and then they show up in Endor all of a sudden, and then he says, hi, Bill has, or whatever her name is. Yeah, obviously it's not. And then she was just like, oh, okay, now I know what's going on. So
Yeah, that's how it goes. And then when you speak of Ender, you're always going to wonder if Ender is talking about the Ewoks. Thank you again, Brick. I know I thought about that too. That maybe the Ender had a whole bunch of Ewoks walking around the witch.
well,
You
wasn't GL also like Jewish?
Who?
GL,
Who's
who wrote Star Wars?
Oh, George Lucas.
Yeah, I don't want to say his name, but
I don't know. We don't know.
is it the mic?
Oh, that's the mic.
So we're spinning the mic. Sorry, guys.
Sherry had a comment in the chat. She said she looked up the name. Gila is not a name in the King James version of the Bible, but is a Hebrew name that means halo or crown. And yeah, so Gila is only mentioned in the series, right? Is that not where you got that from,
Yeah.
Noble?
Yeah, Hela.
Yeah, so that's only the name that was in the series. I'm not sure where that came from. It's not in. I didn't find it in any midrash or online or any. I mean, you can look online. There's nothing. So I think they kind of just made that one up. But yeah, and then Shay said Saul was 7 feet tall himself. Yeah, he was a really tall guy,
No,
and
but the Jewish men back in those days were not very tall to begin with. They were actually under the 6 foot range, easy. And so you add a foot to 5 foot something, that's 6 foot something. Because he was head and shoulders above everybody else, right? So you take the average height of a head, say about even 12 inches. He would still be under 7 feet, but that he would still be tall considered next to his peers. And remember, ancient Jewish men, even though they weren't very large, they were fearsome in their numbers. But I guess it makes it look like the giant Goliath way bigger than a standard Jewish man like David, for example.
well, you look
But-
at Hebrews today. Look at Filipinos. They're not average height compared to
Well, that's all
Americans.
the GMO food that we're eating nowadays. Okay, back then it was good food, but it wasn't
That's
GMO.
not true. If you could live in the Philippines, is way better. So
All right,
they're
so
still kind of short.
so the Witch of Endor, supposedly the Witch of Endor, in this depiction is definitely had a makeover that Brick and Patrick were talking about. This makeover really made her look young because does not look like the mother of the General Abner. Again, but we don't know exactly if that's the one. But they do go back to see her, and Abner says, "No, I don't want to go down that realm. My mom was sick and cursed and all this, but the queen forced him, and next thing you know, they're visiting her
Oh, right,
incognito."
because they were talking about how he had seen this kind of curse before, right?
Yes,
And then
and he does.
he didn't want to have to deal
He,
with
he
that
didn't want to
again.
deal with it. He said,
Yeah.
"That is scary stuff. That's beyond me."
Yeah.
And so, but the queen forced him. Let's talk to your mom. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because we got to fight fire with fire. The next scene that comes up is the Valley of Giants again, and you look at this depiction, or this is a picture from the show. That's a pretty deep-looking valley, and the king of Gath, Achish, or Achish, is there with his lieutenant, I guess, and they're looking to go into this valley of the giants, seeking to get some reinforcements. This again serves the question: was Achish a man, or was he a giant? Because of the fact that the five the Pentapolis, the five cities of the Philistines, were again ruled by the five brothers of Goliath.
I just wanted to read a comment. Tammy said she loved the part when they're watching the sunrise and singing in Hebrew, the beginning of part 2. And I wanted to comment also that this king Achish, he was a giant as well. Like Philistine rulers were giants. That Philistia was a giant nation. And so Gary Wayne actually talks about the difference between other Canaanite nations and the Philistines, and how the Philistines were probably, like, instead of being offspring of seraphim angels, to create the Rephaim that were in most of the land of Canaan, that the Philistines could have been the offspring of cherubim angels, which is why they were known to be kind of darker hair, darker features, whereas the seraphim angel offspring would have had more of like a serpentine look and shiny and blonde hair, blue eyes, or red hair and blue and green eyes. So
So
that's
were
kind
there
of a
other
difference.
angels that disobeyed Abba?
Oh yeah, there was multiple rebellions.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It wasn't just the seraphim.
Well, the show now moves on, where his lieutenant says, "King, I have some horses down in the valley. We should go and take care of business." And as they're riding to their destination, they come to an address entrance marker. And this is it right here. I'm not sure what the actual address is, but this address is something that you want to keep in mind, because how can you not pay attention to that?
It's called Skull Hill.
Skull, or the pile of skulls, or yeah, and it kind of reminds me. It reminds me of Halloween. You look at the Halloween decorations they have nowadays. This is something that would fall along those lines.
Well, it looks like the catacombs in Rome. They have like those lining the walls of the catacombs.
Right.
Oh, right.
Right. And so, as King Achish wants to find his quarry, they come across a valley. I mean, a mountainous opening, and they come to this front door. Talk about a front door. And now we have the knock knock jokes. Okay.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of? That reminds me of Transformers. Remember when they're in the desert?
Oh,
And
they came
there's
up.
they came up against the door, and they were like, "This is not a door made for man." Like,
Well,
Yeah.
also too, if you remember in Rome, I don't know if they can like when we went to Rome and you walk past certain doors, they look like
they're
that.
huge.
You're
Yeah.
like, what in the world? Like, why would they make this for regular sized people and go to all that extra effort?
Right.
Okay, so the knock knock joke is, knock knock. Who's there? IP. And the person behind the door says, IP who? I peed my pants because I'm scared. Okay, so the invitation to enter is given only to King Achish. His lieutenant has to stay behind. And from that point on, that's the change of scene. Now we go to the part where Samuel meets Jesse. Samuel actually goes to the town of Bethlehem first and asks the elders there at the gate, "Hey, I want to do a sacrifice to the Lord with all of you. Can you please invite Jesse and his family?" And the elder says, "Oh, we have nothing to do with that blasphemer, that man that again is not a true Jew. He's been outcast from us, like his youngest son." And so Samuel says, "Okay, well, can you point me in the direction to his estate?" And here we have Samuel coming to Jesse, and Jesse recognized Samuel, and he bows down before him in respect and reverence. And he says, "It's an honor to have you here in our homestead." But he's probably wondering what's going on.
Yeah, also too in the Bible, we were talking about this how uh, or Shmuel actually brought the bull from wherever he came from, not from like that city that Jesse lived in. So he would have been carrying that bull, or leading the bull with him all the way from whatever city he came from, right?
No, he could have just bought it at Walmart in Bethlehem. You know what I mean? I'm sure they have bulls on sale there. It's just a matter of him making sure that he brings his chosen sacrifice with him when he does make the actual sacrifice. So he could have got it from the road, a roadside vendor. He could have gone on Amazon, Prime, and
My
ordered
gosh.
a bull to be delivered, to the gates of Bethlehem. There's so many options. Okay.
Did we go past the scene where he was asking where Jesse lived, and all those guys were
Yeah, I
standing there?
just talked about that already.
Okay, but did you say that why? I didn't hear it if you said why Jesse was no longer on the council with the other guys.
Yes.
You did. Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay. Goes to show you my wife's not listening to me. Samuel asks Jesse, while they're going to be sacrificing the bull, to bring your sons out. And he brings his sons up. Okay. All of them are up there except one. And as the bull is sacrificed, then now, again, to offer, again, appeasement to the Lord, Samuel goes up to each of Jesse's sons, starting with Eliav, and and he puts his hand on their chest and says, "Whoa, why are you so fearful?" You know what I mean? I guess Samuel is being prompted by God to feel the heart of those that he's going to be choosing as his anointed one. And so when he goes through the last son that's there in the presence of the altar of the sacrifice bull, he walks away disturbed. He said, "I don't understand." And so God tells him, "Well, that's because you haven't seen all the sons." And so Samuel is upset at Jesse and tells Jesse, "Are these all your sons?" And Jesse has to confess, "No, the youngest is watching the flocks, as a shepherd." And so again, the burnt offering is there in this picture, and you can tell again that this is not a good time not to have all the sons because he's upset. And the command is, bring your son David here immediately. And Samuel says, "No one will sit until he comes." In fact, it's found in 1 Samuel 16, verse 11. Yeah, Lisa, do you want to read that?
Sure.
Then Samuel
Okay.
said to Jesse,
Okay, sorry. The whole thing wasn't in quotes. I didn't know if you wanted me to just
"Oh,
read the
okay, we'll
quotes.
just read the whole
Then
thing."
Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here."
Okay, 1 Samuel 16, verse 11. All right, again, scripture is being brought into the picture. Scene changes to the shepherd boy, who's again playing his lyre. He lives in the he pretty much practically lives in the fields because he's the only shepherd in the family. Um, and then he's called by his younger sister Ava, and now David comes and meets Samuel for the first time. In fact, he's saying, "What's going on? Why are all my brothers here? What's up with the big barbecue going on? And how come I wasn't invited? Because I'm hungry." So the question is, "Who are you?" David asks of Samuel. And when Samuel tells him that he is the prophet of the God Most High, well, David falls on his knees because he realizes that this is, if this is an ambassador of Christ, of God, he will bow in reverence and respect. Funny because I didn't see the other brothers do that when Samuel was there in their presence.
Yeah, and
You know,
Sherry said it was obvious that Jesse thought that one of the other sons would be chosen before presenting David. And Kaylee said, yes, good job, Kaylee. Very respectful that Shmuel wanted to wait for David. Yeah.
okay. We move on now that where Samuel actually puts his hand on the head of David, and then bam, both of them get a vision of something very, very exhilarating. It's a deep discovery of who David is, and not only for David, but even for Samuel, the realization that this is God's choice. And he gasps and groans, and David is panting because of the fact that they kind of, I guess, supercharged each other when they were in contact with one another, and God was making it known to both of them, each of them, that this is the one. This is the one. For even David didn't know what was going on. The scene now changes to meeting Goliath. And
Oh, this is the one Tammy's waiting for.
here King Achish again talking to Orpha, the mother of the giants, is meeting with her sons, and the first and greatest of the son is Goliath. Okay, and here the family is gathered. You see, Orpah is standing behind King Achish. She's a kind of a older, fragile lady, and yet she is the mother of the giants. Lisa,
Do you want me to give a little background on Orpah?
who Orpah is? Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who have not read Gary Wayne's first book, this is where I found this information, and it really matches up biblically and also in extra biblicals. The book of Orpah gives more information about this as well. Another extra biblical, I think it's in, I think you get it at Sacred Word Publishing. I'm trying to remember which volume it's in, but um, Orpah is mentioned in the Bible as being sister of Ruth. So if you go back to that story of Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, Naomi, as you know, Naomi's husband died and her two sons both died, and it left her two daughters in law. These two were Moabites, and they were actually princesses. Their father was King Eglon in Moab. And so Ruth had became a follower of the Most High, and she said, "No, I'm going to go with you, Naomi. I'm not going back to the palace." But Orpah, on the other hand, she said, "No, I'm going to go back home and live with Dad, and maybe I can find another person to marry." And she did find someone else to marry. We were talking about this in the chat. Her next person that she married was King Og, and they produced 5 children. And so Goliath was one of those of that union. And it says Goliath was the greatest, meaning he was probably the tallest out of and largest out of all the other 5 sons. But they became the rulers of the Philistine Pentapolis.
Pentapolis.
What?
Pentapolis.
Yeah, the Philistine Pentapolis.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that genealogy, who is David's great-great-grandmother or great-great-great-grandmother was Ruth. So that would make David and Goliath cousins. That was just like blew my mind when I was reading Gary Wayne's book, but I looked up all his references and it's correct.
It's like what, a second or third cousin, right?
Yeah,
Because
I think it's like third cousin.
Orpah was
Or
Ruth's,
uncle.
yeah,
Isaac said uncle
it
because
would be like because from Ruth and Boaz to Obed,
Obed to
to
Jesse
Jesse
to
to
David.
David. So we're talking 4 generations.
Right,
Then you got Orpah, and then Orpah had sons.
right,
So that's 2 uncles above, like a great uncle,
right.
you know.
Oh, and you don't have a mic.
I do, I have a
Oh, you
mic.
do? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you look at that, they produced five giants that became rulers of Philistia, but those were not Og's only children. Like Og fathered hundreds of children with women because and they all became either Rephaim rulers or mighty warriors, Gibberim. You know, they were like the famous ones of old, but the famous ones after the flood. And these are the ancestors of the European royals today. So that's why they have the royals playing all the roles.
All right. Now the scene moves to again back to Samuel and his disclosure. Okay, what is his disclosure? Samuel tells David, "Your heart seeks after God." Okay, and you know when you think about that, anybody that really seeks after God, especially if you're an outcast and you commit yourself to the Lord, God has his ears prompt up to you. He realizes that, yeah, you are alone, but you're not alone in my world. I am paying attention. So Samuel says, your heart seeks after God, and therefore he is sought after you. So if you're looking for God, God will look for you as well. Again, I found this pretty again enlightening, knowing that we may not be anointed kings, but we will be anointed prince and princesses in His kingdom because He calls us to be His family. And if God is king, what does that make us? His children, His royal family.
Right.
That's a true royal family. So here you notice that David's got the oil running from his forehead, down his nose, down his cheek, misses his eye, thank God, because he wouldn't be able to see anything. But again, um, he is declared the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda. Okay, and this is where he is now known as the Lion, not because of killing a lion, but because he has the heart of a lion, coming from the small town of Bethlehem, from from his father Jesse. And now Samuel says, "This is God's rejection of Saul." Again, the Lord has rejected the house of Saul forever. And this is big news because remember, David's older brothers are soldiers in the
And
house of
Saul's
Saul.
army. Yeah.
Yes. So keeping that in mind, now with the oil being smeared on his head, Samuel says, "You are the Lord's anointed. You are, again, accepted to him as his son, and you are anointed." And Jesse, on the side says, "Anointed as what?" And Samuel says, "The king of Israel."
Yeah. This is a really good part.
Yeah,
Tammy said this is an amazing part. I think this was my favorite part so far.
well, of course, it's from the rags to riches, from the pauper to the prince.
Yeah.
From those, again, from the insurmountable odds to becoming top dog. You know what I mean? Again, this is where victory is actually recognized because someone who was nothing now becomes, you know, something
Hmm.
of significance. So again, this again ends the house of David, and we do have a few more minutes left. I'm not sure if you wanted to go into the next season or the next show, the next episode.
And when are the next episodes coming out? Tomorrow?
Yes, it's coming out tomorrow.
So don't forget, you guys watch. If for those of you who are watching the series, the next episode comes out tomorrow. So take notes, and we'll be reviewing this again next week. Thank you guys all for joining
No,
us.
wait.
Oh, Noble's not done. Sorry.
No, I wonder what you're doing there. We talked last time. We read First Samuel. Isaac said we read First Samuel 15. Let me see. First Samuel 16 is what we just experienced. Okay. Oh, it's going to go to chapter 17, David and Goliath. I'm not sure. Is that what the show is going to be presenting? Does anybody know what tomorrow's episode is going to be showing? I'm going to have to do some research here.
Hey, do we have an air pump for the pool?
They have a vacuum cleaner. They can pump air.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the chat. Kelly, are you in the chat?
Does it blow or does it suck?
It does both.
Oh.
It can do both. Kelly, are you in the chat?
I'm in the chat. It doesn't. Well, I feel like the people on the mainland would know, what the episode's gonna be before we do, if it premieres on their time, But
Okay. Well, you know what? Maybe we can. Let me go online and see what they say about this
yeah.
House of David. Okay. In the meanwhile, Isaac, talk.
Talk what?
Here.
Oh, what are you talking about? Kaylee's telling me she's having contractions.
What?
I
No, don't do that. Don't say that.
don't care. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Let's
So
do it.
House of David. Okay, here we go. Season. Okay, let's see. What is episode 4 going to be bringing up? Anybody got an inkling on this yet? Yep, my main researchers just left the building. Lisa, are you back? Okay. Need to find out what the 4th episode is going to be talking about, what their storyline is in the 4th episode.
Well, I guess we have replacement batteries.
The
We've already
4th
came with
episode.
Yes, the Song of Moses. It says.
Tammy said it doesn't show any information for each episode. She's looking also. Thank you, Tammy.
Well, it mentions the Song of Moses. What does that mean?
Oh, Nancy said tonight it comes on Tuesdays in New Jersey. So
Yeah,
maybe you guys on the East Coast, you get to watch it first.
Yep, I again have no idea what's going on here. I mean, what the show is. So we'll again, I guess we'll end it here then because we have no idea where we're going. But if you again have any inkling of what's going to be shared,
Oh, Sherry put it in here.
What?
Wow. She said, House of David, season 1, episode 4, The Song of Moses. A member of the palace faces serious allegations that force the royal family to react. Samuel suffers a grave loss and sees himself confronted.
Thank you
Wow.
for the copy and paste.
Thank you, Sherry. With the consequences of his prophecy, David discovers a new world. Wow. Awesome.
what chapter is that in First Samuel then? Song of Moses and what?
The Song of Moses, she said.
And what else? And you see, what was it? What else did you read? I mean, can you repeat what you read?
A member of the palace faces serious allegations that force the royal family to react. Samuel suffers a grave loss and sees himself confronted with the consequences of his prophecy. David discovers a new world.
Okay, so yeah, we pretty much know that in the last episode, Doeg kills Samuel's apprentice. So that's what Samuel discovers. That's very disturbing.
Yeah, and that's also not, we looked in the. It's not in the Bible that he had
Yeah,
an
that's-
apprentice or any of that happened.
Yeah,
but
that's not
Doeg
in
was an
Scripture.
evil person though.
And then David discovers a new life. You said
A new world.
a new world. He discovers a new world. That's gonna be the world of being in the palace of Saul. You know, to help calm him during his demonic episodes. So
And I have some information for next time to read about the harp, but we'll wait till we get there.
okay, I'm just looking and seeing if there's anything.
Brick said, "Let's have a Discord watch party at 3 a.m. That's Detroit time."
Oh, that's good.
Well, we could. That's what is that? 3 a.m. in Detroit is what time here? 11.
4
10?
hours. Detroit, I think, is 4 hours ahead of us.
11.
Yeah.
Well, we'll check into Discord if you're in there, Brick. We'll still be awake at 11 here.
Yeah. But you know, again, it was a great time covering and critiquing these 3 past episodes.
Sherry shared a passage from Exodus 15. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Thank you, Sherry.
Song of Moses, yeah.
Yeah,
that's the
right
Song
on.
of Moses. So maybe go back to Exodus 15 and read that again. And again, let's look at the rest of First Samuel. You can read it on your own, and you know, just get ahead of the game. If you can read, you know, up to the completion of, it's going to cover, you know, David and Goliath, David going into the kingdom of Saul, Saul trying to pin him. Just a lot of that. Good to know. Brick
also-
says we're 6 hour difference. Is it daylight savings already gone?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay,
Maybe
East
end of
Coast
this
is
month.
5 hour difference. So maybe Detroit is part of East Coast time, Brick. And I know it's 2 hours to the West Coast where Phil is at, and so that's only 2 hours from our time.
I also encourage you, a lot of you are reading Legends of the Jews with us in DRC. So jump ahead and read the part about David in Legends of the Jews. That gives you some more background. See, that's what I've been doing anyway.
Yeah, you got to remember that the Legend of the Jews, you know, is a Jewish commentary on Genesis. So again, just take everything with a grain of salt, and
See what matches up to the Bible.
see what matches up,
doesn't.
and if there's other resources or witnesses that matches up to it. Again, we are again going through this series just like you are, trying to match it up with everything that we read and everything that we know, and using all the sources that's at our fingertips. All right. So with that, we're gonna call this a day. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Yeah, it was a good
I
time.
just want to hear
Bye.
everybody's Isaac and Kelly.
Shaloha.
Aloha, guys. And then from Lisa and myself,
Aloha, everybody. We'll see you
Aloha.
on Saturday.
Yep.
We're having
God bless.
parental confirmation.
Take care,
so-
and we'll let you know when the next show comes on.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone, for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Wait, I can't end it.
Oh, okay.
How come it won't let me? Oh, there it is. Goodbye.
We are trying to